So this video is going to be a little bit more of like a psychotic episode than it is going to be educational or valuable to anybody out there. But yeah, maybe this can relate to somebody else. This isn't the start of a schizophrenic episode. I promise. I'm not going to turn into a Terry Davis, even though I do wish I could code half as good as he could. This isn't going to be a John Nash situation. If you know what I'm talking about, watch the movie A Beautiful Mind. If you don't know what I'm talking about, but yeah, this is essentially here for anybody that is feeling quite annoyed about how slow progress is. But I guess most of this is me going to be talking to myself. But if somebody out there is listening and somebody out there can resonate with something that I'm saying, please drop a comment. And I think we should all, get together and get to know each other. Should be fun. In my first year, I thought physics was about being smart enough to solve certain problems, and you either had it or you didn't have it. And looking back on that, people would call that a bad mindset. That's a fixed mindset. But that's just how I felt. And in the first year, I remember I was doing very well. Um, and then I hit a roadblock. I didn't understand something. And I completely buckled. And I didn't study. I didn't sit with pen and paper, scratching my head, trying to figure out what these, you know, black and white letters mean and these symbols, and I just gave up. It sort of didn't give up, but I stopped trying as hard. Maybe that's the best way to put it, because it was getting difficult, and I didn't realize how much endurance you require whenever it comes to studying physics and mathematics. Of course, this applies really to any of the STEM fields, I suppose, or any subject that requires a lot of problem solving and thinking deeply about certain things, because it's not something you just memorize. Think of a bunch of different situations of how it could be used and then solve some problems on that. You get very minimal input in terms of what it actually is that you're learning, if you know what I mean. Like, you get an equation, you maybe have a set of assumptions, you get the symbols, and you can write the equation down, but realistically, you don't actually understand what that means until you sit with a problem and you try to solve a problem using those equations and those concepts. But you need to spend more time being confused than being confident, is what I realized, because it comes back to bite you. It comes back to bite you, and that's where the real growth happens. Is whenever you take the chance to just embrace the failure. I'm sure we've all heard of Einstein. I'm sure we've all heard of Stephen Hawking. I'm sure we've all heard of Isaac Newton. And these people didn't just one day wake up with their ideas. They thought deeply about these things. They didn't just, have a problem to solve as quick as possible to prove that they were smart. At least that's not how I think that they went about it, because at the end of the day, all that is ego, and that's not good for anybody. Ego's not good for anyone. In any field, in any aspect of life, you cannot afford to think that you're more than who you actually are. When it comes to ego, it's very complex. I don't really understand it, to be honest. I'm reading a book at the moment called The Way of Zen by Alan Watts, and I resonate quite a lot with what he says, and I resonate quite a lot with the Eastern philosophy that he teaches, because way I heard it best anyway is that sort of thinking is like a paradoxical thinking. And paradoxical thinking seems to make the most sense to me, whereas most people think that there's the best good to attend to, whereas with paradoxical thinking there's no necessary good or bad. It's all part of the same symphony, which is hard to think about on a very small scale. But when you've got, things happening on such a grand scale in terms of the universe, I'm sure it makes way more sense if you can possibly fathom that. I can't. But anyway, back to the physics. So, as I said earlier, the first lesson that physics teaches you is patience. You can't rush anything. It essentially just has to blossom. There's problems that you think, what do I do? How do I do this? you go and read, whether you're trying to derive a formula or debug a simulation or something like that, there's always a constant reminder that the universe doesn't bend to your will. And obviously, Neil deGrasse Tyson said it best. I think he's quoting somebody else. I'm not really sure if it's his own quote, but he essentially says that the universe is under no obligation to make sense to you. And yeah, so like if you're thinking that something doesn't make sense, then it doesn't have to. No, not necessarily. It doesn't. The universe doesn't have to bend to your will. And that process, by slowing down and thinking deeper and trying again, it rewires how you see everything in life, every challenge, every intellectual thing, but also as well every single aspect of life changes. You realize that the only way out is through, apparently. That's what I've heard that from somewhere. I can't really remember at the moment where exactly that's from, but the only way out is through. And a little bit of caffeine helps. I had a serious caffeine problem whenever I was studying. I probably would have drank like coffee 3 times a day, crash out. It's not good. These days, I don't even drink coffee. I drink decaf green tea to, as I say, be more zen, I guess. But the second lesson with physics is making peace with failure. Every breakthrough in physics is built on a failure. It's built on the fact that somebody else was wrong. It's built on the fact that you think your idea corrects somebody else's past failures. Wrong assumptions and dead ends and experiments that don't match the theory, that's where the real kicker lies. The Michelson-Morley experiment, whenever it came to trying to measure the ether, the Stern-Gerlach experiment, like whenever things aren't working the way that you think they're meant to work, that's exactly the moment where you'll feel the most stupid, but you'll have the greatest insight. Just don't be afraid of being wrong, because you probably are. Just accept it, But eventually you realize that as you're watching this, I'm not just talking about physics, I'm talking about life. I'm talking about having a certain mindset that will help you learn. Talking about accepting failure. Talking about having patience. The best way that I've actually learned how to have patience is by running on a treadmill with absolutely no music and just relying solely on the stimulation of the numbers in front of me. And I just wait to see where my mind goes. And sometimes it goes to somewhere, majority of the time it goes to a pretty nice place, but a lot of the time it's just distracted. A lot of the time it's just a bunch of quiche, a bunch of just useless information floating through my mind that I don't need. And you can say that's frustrating, or that's just a purging of the mind. I believe it's like a purge, because after a run's finished, you feel totally elated, at least in my experience. I know a lot of people hate running, but that's sort of why I like running anyway. It's the closest thing to, like, what would you call it? It's the closest thing to a voluntary euphoric experience that you can probably get. That isn't drugs. So there you go. If you're struggling to understand something, whether it's with physics, if it's programming, if it's life, relationships, don't rush the process, because I know I've been guilty of that. I know I've been guilty of just trying to do a problem, trying to solve it there and then, so it's out of the way so I can move on to the next thing. I really want to learn how to do object-oriented programming. I really want to learn how to do partial differential equations, so then I can understand a little bit about electromagnetism. I've been there. And I've come to the conclusion only now, post university and pre real life, I guess, like work, job, marriage, stuff like that, that realistically you actually just have to trust the process and just keep going and stay patient, and the understanding will come. And that's exactly what physics has taught me. So I hope if you enjoy this, you can subscribe for more reflections. Maybe not more of this, because this is not really my thing. I don't really like talking to rambling in front of a camera. It doesn't really help in any way. I don't think it helps me. It might help somebody out there, but I don't think it helps me, because I'm not engaging with someone. I'm not engaging with anybody's ideas other than my own, and that can get very narcissistic. So yeah, if you did enjoy this, please comment. Let me know what you're going through and what it is you're trying to wrap around your head. And I'm not going to claim to know everything, but I'm sure I've got some little piece of advice that might help you in my minimal experience on this planet. But yeah, thanks for watching.